All of you met probably Olaf Grimson, who has been president for 20 years in his country, Iceland. And we invented something which is very unique, I should say, the place to be every year, the Arctic Circle. And Olaf, you were so helpful, so kind when I call you in September, and you say, yes, I will miss you, and we have the pleasure to be in Iceland 2 weeks ago. So please, you deserve an applause for what you have done.
Well, thank you indeed for inviting the Arctic Circle and myself to be a part of this effort. And of course, when the President of France decides the first time as a leader of the G7 country to bring to the world the importance of the ice-covered areas 2 weeks before the world gathers at COP28 in Dubai, of course we all turn up. But we also have to be very honest and frank about the challenges we face. Because the climate threat, as has been demonstrated here and a number of times, but perhaps not communicated sufficiently to people and political leaders all over the world, the climate threat is in fact all about the ice. The reason why there are climate disasters in different parts of the world is that the glaciers and the ice are melting. The aggressive melting of the Arctic sea ice is the major cause of the destruction of the monsoon weather patterns in Asia. And the dramatic events we are seeing in the Americas, in Europe and elsewhere. And as was said earlier here today, the aggressive melting of the Greenland ice sheet and Antarctica is the greatest security threat to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Shanghai, Miami, and all the coastal areas all over the world. So whereas people have a difficulty in understanding climate and climate change, which are in fact complicated concepts, everybody understands ice and how it is melting. So the biggest challenge in the climate action, as I see it, is to make the world aware that the ice is melting. That is why I welcome the initiative by the President of France and why I think it is of fundamental importance that for the first time a leader of a G7 country has decided to step forward and call on all of us to help him and others in this endeavor. So how can we do it? How can we do it? We owe it to ourselves and to him and to humanity to be brutally frank in that discussion. When I decided to gather a coalition of partners more than 10 years ago to establish what became known as the Arctic Circle, all the Arctic gatherings in different parts of the world were small and of very little consequence, quite frankly. 50, 100 people, 150 people, scientists talking to scientists, diplomats to diplomats, indigenous people to indigenous people. There was no formidable international annual gathering where every stakeholder in the Arctic and anyone who had anything to contribute on the future of the Arctic territory came together. There was no, to put it simply, a Davos of the Arctic. And we succeeded in 10 years to make the Arctic Circle such a gathering. With every assembly now in October in Iceland every year, with over 2,000 participants from more than 70 countries, governments, scientific institutions, NGOs, indigenous community, business leaders, and others. And then, in addition, Arctic Circle forums in Asia, in Europe, the Americas. The last one was in Tokyo, the next one will be in Berlin. Listing up government after government, country after country in this evolving global coalition. But it is not just about the Arctic. It is also a new model of bringing people together. Because I fundamentally believe, although I spent half a century of my life inside the official governmental global system, it's no longer working. It's no longer working.
Good news.
And we have to bring together a coalition of anyone who has anything to contribute to the table, whatever their position, wherever they come from. And that is why the Arctic Circle has been successful, because anyone with anything to contribute, I will be finishing in 1 or 2 minutes, is welcome to the table. So I think, my good friend, the challenge from this summit is how do we create structures which keep this coalition growing and working with anyone who has anything to contribute inside the tent, not outside. And let me conclude with this, following your talk. We have to be brutally frank to recognize there is an elephant in the room and there is a tiger in the room. This is not yet another European or Western luxury kind of journey. As you correctly said, how can we conduct research on the permafrost, on the Arctic, without access to Russian data and Russian scientists? We will never succeed in this journey if we are not brutally frank about answering the question, how do we find ways to cooperate with the scientific research institutions inside Russia? Whatever the conflicts, whatever the wars. And if Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt could do a deal with Stalin when it was necessary, we should also have a serious discussion about the elephant in the room. But there's also a tiger in the room, because the growing contribution of the Asian countries, India, Japan, Korea, China, and others, to Arctic research, Antarctica research, Himalayan research, Third Pole research, is formidable. It's formidable. When people want to talk to me about China, I always say, let's first talk about Korea. The Korean Polar Institute has over 200 qualified scientists. They are now building their second research vessel. It will be impossible for us to conduct meaningful polar science in the years to come without integrating the Asian scientific contribution into this. And in order to do that, we need political leadership. We need the leaders of the G7 countries to realize this is no longer a G7 club. We have to be able to deal both with the elephant and the tiger, as well as opening a big tent where everyone with anything to contribute is welcomed inside the tent. That is why, my friend, we accepted your invitation, and that's why we are honored to be with you here today.
Thank you, Olafur. Thank you. Bravo. Ashok. I'm sure you will do that in 2 minutes, no?
We'll try to.
You are supposed to be my deputy now, but which is not the case with Olafur, so I can interrupt. Thank you so much, Ashok, for what you have done during these 2 days. Let's speak about Foundation Explorers and also Ocean Rise and Resilience Coalition.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, Madame la Ministre, Excellencies. Yes, three domains in which we interacted a lot. With this perspective, if you allow me, of the UN Ocean Conference in June 25, which France with Costa Rica is going to host in Nice. Explorers are inspirers, and it's through concrete action, operators, you said, concrete exploration not only of the poles, but exploration also of what brings people to the planet and the planet with the poles in mind. So based on these few lines and with the mantra, I would say, or the guidelines of Chairman Pascal Lamy, we tried in both sequences, one on the foundations and the other one on cities and coastal regions, to work on a line which brings knowledge to conscious awareness, to, as Pascal says, policy, and then to action. the first action, and we thank President Frederik Paulsen for reserving the launch and the announcement of his 10 million given to the foundation and which is hosted by the CNRS in France to scientific exploration of the poles, in line of all what you have been doing, President Paulsen, for all the actors who are over here, and that inspired a lot of the other foundations who were around the table yesterday, starting with Monaco, the two foundations, but also Tara Ocean, which celebrated 25 years of exploration with scientists of the poles. And Tara announced again the support of the French government of 13 million. We spoke about money, actually, because without money, there's no action. 13 million from the French government for Tara Foundation and the Polar Pod. And that was very, I think, enthusiastic sequence, although the figures that we have been getting since two days are not very enthusiastic. But that brought us this morning with the presence of Minister Béchu, as you told us, Ambassador, but also the gift which came from India, the Honorable Minister for Earth and Science, who jointly, France and India, supported this initiative, which is bringing together the network of more than 40 cities within the platform of Ocean and Climate, la plateforme Océan et Climat, a platform called Cities that we consolidated in Brest at the One Ocean Summit, towards Nice, towards UNOC in 2025, to create a coalition of cities, regions, and also developing islands, and to bring representatives of more than 1 billion inhabitants to come to Nice in June. That will be in the form of a summit of regions and coastal cities. We want to come to Nice with deliverables again, action, policy briefs, and money, financing of this new coalition, which is going to be called Ocean Rise and Resilience. So we thank also the mayor of Nice, the host city of the UNOC, to take the baton till Nice, and all the scientists, the organizations from the UN, like UN Habitat, who are going to join this coalition and make it, scale it up, as you say, Pascal, to deliver action in Nice. So I think that in these two dimensions, the foundations, but also what we delivered this morning with the minister from India, the minister from France, the mayor of Nice, and all the different cities who are already participating in the platform Ocean and Climate. We gave ourselves the objectives to be very concrete, tangible, and action-oriented towards the UN Ocean Conference. Thank you.
Thank you. You are going to work a bit more. There is a small gift for you, David. Can we have an online meeting with Antarctica? Is that okay? With our friends of the British Antarctic base of Risera. Hello, Minister. You want to say Emzel? They would be very happy to see you. Please come. Yeah. We are in Paris. Where are you?
Good afternoon. We're here at Rothera Station, which is on the Western Antarctic Peninsula. And yeah, we're here now in the station leader's office. It's wonderful to join you. Thank you very much for having us.
How long have you been in this marvelous hotel where you live?
Different lengths of time. So this season I've been here the longest moment. I came down last February, so 8 or 9 months. And then Aurelia and Joe came down a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so we are a combination of a wintering group. So Blair was the wintering station leader for the previous winter, and then the both of us have joined for the summer season to relieve the winterers of their duties and give them some support in opening up the station and preparing us for the science season, as well as for a busy construction season to continue building our new operations building.
And with you, all of you are scientists, the three of you.
So I'm the current Rothera Science Coordinator, and I'm a meteorologist. So I'm looking after all of the physical science that's happening on station and in the field. So that includes space weather, all the atmospheric stuff, and aerosol things that we do as well. And Ray has been involved in some of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a science background, so my background is marine science, and I was a scientist here for a few years, and then I moved into station operations. I'm now the station leader of Rotherham, but obviously with my background, science is incredibly close to my heart. So being able to support the science that's ongoing on station and being able to facilitate that and make us sort of future-proof for science and increase our capacity to support science is very important here on station.
And you,
I'm
sir?
also from a science background as well, but then moved into field guide work and then this year as winter station leader.
I just want to introduce you to somebody who is important for you, who is your minister at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and David Rutley, if you want to say a few words to your compatriot.
Well, welcome. It's good to see you there. And we're enormously proud, not just in the UK. We've got Dame Jane here as well, who heads up the British Antarctic Survey. But we're enormously proud of all that you're doing. And today we're hearing about the implications of your work. And one thing I'd like to ask, because it's becoming so clear, one of the important words from just about every single speech is the importance of collaboration, particularly with science. We'd love to just hear about some of your experiences in that space, because it affects everybody here. You know, we want this collaboration to move forward. We recognize your expertise, but we recognize the expertise of many people here as well. How's that going? How is our collaboration working?
Yeah, so that's going really well. In fact, I'm actually due to go out on a project this weekend out to the Larsen Ice Shelf to work alongside a project that's for our Dutch colleagues, doing some of their atmospheric science they've got going on over there. And also on station, we have lots of a really strong connection with the Dutch, actually, because we also have the Dutch lab that comes down here. And we get scientists that come and visit every summer to come and work on their projects alongside us. We've also got lots of really good collaborations going on in the field this year as well, especially with the Thwaites collaboration that sees a lot of international participation. That's looking really deep into the Thwaites Glacier and everything that's going on in that region. So yeah, it's been really great to be involved with all our international colleagues and having them come through and visit the station. Last year we had some a Spanish ship come alongside and come and visit the station as well. So that was really nice to see some of their scientists getting off and investigating some of the marine life around the station as well. So it's really nice when we're able to collaborate with other agencies as well.
And from a sort of operational point of view, Joe mentioned the Thwaites Glacier project. We're sort of holding fire on that at the moment, waiting for some weather windows to input the first people from the British side to start opening up that part and getting that project on the go for this season. But we also currently have 3 aircraft, 3 non-BAS aircraft here at Rotherham, waiting to move on further into the field and to support different programs. So yeah, collaboration is really important here at Rotherham, and especially as we currently have those transiting aircraft and their crew on station who are in their layover, helping us out with opening up our station, helping us with snow clearing and supporting our operation while we support that operation on their way through further into the continent. And it's a really beautiful atmosphere to get different people from different nations and also from different programs in this joint effort to understand Antarctica a bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause for the team, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last question. What is the temperature outside? The weather is good now?
Yeah, we've just gone above 0, so the last little while we've been quite cold, but today we're at 0.4, so we've just popped up above 0, so it's slowly warming up a little bit, but it's still pretty cold out there, especially with the high winds we've been having at the moment.
Okay.
Quite sunny still today.
And it's lunchtime for you? No? What?
It's in and out sunshine today, a bit patchy, but the last week or so we've had some pretty gnarly storms coming through with gusts of up to 60 knots. So that's been pretty intense to deal with on station walking around, but it's looking much nicer today, and hopefully into the weekend it's going to improve for us as well.
The food is good?
The food is excellent.
Yes.
We're all waiting for the Sir David Attenborough to come and join us in about 2 weeks' time to bring us lots of fresh food and to replenish our stores, because we haven't had any new food since the SDA last visited us in May last year. So we're running low on a few things, but our chefs are absolutely excellent. And some of the transiting aircraft who have been here with us for a few days have kindly donated their fresh food because it would have gone off otherwise. So we've had some fresh cauliflower and some fresh lettuce, but we're all very excited about the City of Edinburgh coming in and bringing us some fresh stock of food.
Excellent. Stay online because you will meet in 2 seconds one of your compatriots coming from Scotland, the chairman of the IPCC, Jim Ski, that I'm so happy to welcome in Paris for the first time. Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks very, very much. And just to say, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real privilege to address you as the chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC or GIEC. And I'm very grateful to the French government for the opportunity to address this One Planet Polar Summit. Now, the IPCC is a unique interface between scientists from different disciplines and between scientists and policymakers. My own background is in Working Group 3 of IPCC in mitigation, so I'm here partly for my education, but I have learned much in the last cycle from interaction with other colleagues, including my former colleague and continuing friend, Valérie Masson-Delmotte, from Working Group 1, who's just been succeeded by Robert Votard, also from France. Now, earlier this year, IPCC completed its 6th assessment, and the findings are truly sobering. We concluded that human influence is unequivocally causing climate change. Global warming of 1.5 or 2 degrees is going to be exceeded during this century unless there are immediate, rapid and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. 2 years ago, when the Working Group 1 report on the science came out, it was reported that the world had warmed by 1.1 degrees Celsius. And in fact, as we well know, we are heading to much higher levels of warming this very year. And I think an important point to make is that the warming is much larger in the polar regions than it is for the global average, and this is of extreme importance. Many of the changes that we've observed in the climate are unprecedented in thousands of years, and some of the changes that are already set in motion, such as continued sea level rise, are irreversible over hundreds to thousands of years. And as we've already heard, the changes in the polar regions ripple right across the whole planet. Now, this subject is so important for us. We did produce a special report on oceans and cryosphere in a changing climate during the last cycle. And I have a number of sentences I was given in my speech to report on the conclusions, but we've heard them all in the last hour or 90 minutes, so I will skip over that point of the remark. But just to say, these findings and other key scientific findings point to the urgency of climate action. And we have heard about the importance of sticking to the Paris goals and the phase-out of fossil fuels. Now, just to say, with my Working Group 3 background, that is not quite as simple as it sounds, and we managed to turn that one sentence into an entire report that was as thick as a telephone directory in the last cycle to talk about the challenges of doing so. But I think to sum it all up, we as human beings do have the agency to shape our future. We have the policies, we have the know-how, and we have the financial resources to shape our future if we choose to put them into effect. An equitable and just transition is essential, and it needs to involve climate action that is, and is perceived to be, genuinely and fundamentally fair and inclusive. Now, in IPCC, we're currently engaged in planning activities and outputs for the next 7th cycle, which has just started in July and will last for between 5 and 7 years. One thing we are already committed to is a special report on climate change in cities, and there's been a call for nominations for scoping for that already. And at the moment, we're listening very carefully to the views of governments who will make decisions about the next cycle within the next few months. So, just to say, in closing, as the new chair of the IPCC, I would like to reassure ministers and other people in the audience that the scientific community and IPCC will continue to bring new knowledge and understanding forward, and that we will ensure that that knowledge and understanding is relevant for policy making. And at this point, before I make any further promises that I will have to live up to, I will close my remarks there and pass the floor back. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'm so happy to invite the Minister of Science and Earth in India, Shri Kiren Rijiju. Please, Minister.
Thank you very much. Namaste. At the outset, I would like to thank the government of France, particularly Mr. Sylvie Retello, the Minister of Higher Education and Research, for inviting me to this unique and first international summit dedicated to glaciers and the poles. I convey my sincere adulation to the government of France for adopting its first national polar strategy in 2022 and for organizing such an apt event, the One Planet Polar Summit, that aims to bridge the gap between research, policy, and governance so that the society at large is benefited. 4 months back, I was in the polar region, and believe me, my feelings and understanding became very urgent towards climate change. In India, we have third pole, the Himalayan region, and I also commit that we will intensify our activities in the third pole in the Himalayan region. The findings of atmospheric and the ocean studies being undertaken in the polar regions continue to advance our understanding with regard to teleconnections between poles and the tropics, especially the relevant for Indian summer monsoon. Polar scientific research remains a national priority for India. India considers the Arctic and the Antarctica as integral parts of the global climate system, which requires long-term monitoring and research. We all understand that the Arctic is warming at 3 to 4 times the global average and remains a challenge for us. The Antarctica, Arctic, mountain glaciers, and Southern Ocean environment are vital elements of Earth's climate, and studying the polar region is key to unlocking the past, better understanding the present, and predicting the future. I'm pleased to share that in India we have recently enacted the Indian Antarctic Law 2022 and related rules that seek protection of pristine environment of Antarctica in accordance with the Madrid Protocol. Also in the year 2022, India released its Arctic policy entitled India and the Arctic, building a partnership for sustainable development, which aims at expanding research and international cooperation, harmonizing with mountain glaciers, combating climate change, environmental protection, and creating awareness within India on significance of Arctic region. When talking about poles and glaciers, the Himalayan glaciers need a special mention. The glacier count in Indian Himalayan region alone is more than 9,000 glaciers, covering an area of 22,800 square kilometers, which further increases when we consider the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. The huge Himalayan ice reserves serve as indispensable water resources, supplying fresh water to the major river systems of Indus, Ganga, and Brahmaputra. The meltwater discharge from these glaciers are not only used for domestic purposes, but also for generation of electricity in the hydroelectric power plants and irrigation of crops. The Himalayan glaciers have had profound social, economic, and cultural and demographic influence in our nation. Catering to the urgent need to study and understand various components of the cryosphere, the Indian Polar Program is implemented by the Ministry of Earth Sciences through its Autonomous Institute, National Center for Polar and Ocean Research Center at Goa. India has one Himadri research station in Arctic, where I had been 4 months back, and 2 other research stations, Bharti and Maitri in Antarctica. India has successfully completed 42 scientific expeditions to the Antarctica and 13 scientific expeditions to the Arctic. I just would like to inform that from this year onwards, we have made our stations Himadri as permanent one. When I visited, I felt, and I must thank the government of Norway for acceding to my request, and our scientists are already there now. As a country that believes in the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole world is one family. India believes in collective development and prosperity of the world. Hence, we are sharing whatever expertise that we gain, we share with the rest of the world. As highlighted in the outcome of the Scientific Forum, 8 and 9 November 2023, the polar regions, glaciers, and related ecosystems stand extremely vulnerable and susceptible to the impacts and consequences of climate change and developmental paradigms. We have also acknowledged that despite these facts, our knowledge about the functioning of the polar regions within the global climate systems and its spatio-temporal complexity still has gaps. Another pertinent issue that is, as extreme climate events become rampant, glaciers retreat and permafrost thaws in the mountain regions like Himalayan, the risk of natural disaster like the glacial lake outbursts, floods, ice rock fall, landslide, and flash floods heighten manifold. These disasters cause significant and irreparable damage to the mountain communities and infrastructure. In this year alone, India had to bear multiple attacks from the outbursts of the nature. Just last month, we lost many lives when the glacial lake burst, and properties and lives were taken away. In the Western Himalayas, we constantly faced in last monsoon the fury of the monsoon. We had to deal with such a difficult situation, which we are witnessing more and more. So finally, coming to the end of my observation, the current deteriorating state of poles and glaciers call for concerted actions towards risk reduction and mitigation of the impacts by accelerating research endeavors, by focusing on gap areas and enhancing international collaboration, acting together and striving towards achieving the global commitments, creating awareness regarding issues related to poles and glaciers by suitable instruments like declaring 2040 or 2050 as the polar decade, convening more across-sectors dialogues and discourses like this summit on a regular basis to review the status of efforts being made for preserving the poles and the glaciers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now it's time for leading women. So we have the pleasure to, when I say we, it's France, to share one station, a scientific station in Svalbard, La VIPEF with Germany, but also Concordia with our Italian friends. So I'm So happy to welcome Anna Maria Bernini, who is the Italian Minister for Higher Education and Research.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks. Dear fellow ministers, Honorable Chair, esteemed experts, delegates, and participants, I'm glad to be here today to share with you a few reflections and experiences about the importance that my country attributes to cryosphere and the polar regions items. Italy deeply recognizes that observing the polar regions, including the third pole, is essential for the future and the preservation of our planet. This is indeed a critical decade. Extreme weather, rising temperatures and sea levels, devastating events such as droughts, floods, wildfires, marine warming, ocean acidification, and record lows in sea ice extent are affecting ecosystems, economies, and human well-being around the world. It is more than ever necessary to invest in research and increase scientific and public awareness regarding the crucial role of polar regions. Over the last 40 years, Italy has enhanced long-term observational activities in the Arctic and Antarctica. In Antarctica, the Italian National Research Council participates in the National Programme for Research in Antarctica, financed by the Italian Ministry of Universities and Research. The programme involved several national research facilities, such as the Mario Zucchelli Research Station, located in Terranova Bay on the Ross Sea, and the Concordia, that the Honourable Chair mentioned before, Research Station, located on the Antarctic Plateau, which is a remarkable example of logistics and scientific cooperation between Italy and France. Likewise, concerning the Arctic regions, we financed the Italian National Arctic Research Programme, and the Italian National Research Council runs the Dirigibile Italia Research Station since 1997. This laboratory hosts researchers engaged in studies ranging from atmospheric chemistry, physics, to marine biology, oceanography, environmental studies, biology, and medicine. Italy is strongly committed to a multidisciplinary, holistic, and coordinated approach. If we really want to figure out how to address the great challenges that are affecting these regions and their implications on a global scale, we must develop a non-stop international cooperation approach in all key sectors, avoiding those short-term interventions that could have negative environmental and socio-economic impacts. The importance we attach to these topics has been consolidated by the launch of the Institute for Polar Sciences. Our polar research programs allowed us to move rapidly towards the creation of distributed Italian polar data centers. The Italian Arctic Data Center and the Italian Antarctic Data Center are based on findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data principles, which our ministry strongly supports. In addition, we have enhanced our training programs for the next generation of polar researchers by opening a new PhD national program in polar sciences at the Ca' Foscari University in Venice. We are committed to strengthening and renewing our research infrastructures. My ministry has recently invested over 30 million euros in the renovation of our 2 Antarctic stations. Additionally, the new icebreaker Laura Bassi, the Italian polar research vessel, financed by the Italian Ministry of Universities Research, is doing a great job. Italy also participates in different international organizations such as the Svalbard Integrated Arctic Earth Observing System, the Arctic Research Icebreaker Consortium, the International Network for Terrestrial Research and Monitoring in the Arctic, and we will join the coming POLARIN program aimed at promoting the sharing of international research infrastructures. Moreover, we're proud to be one of the co-founders of the Ice Memory Project, which intends to collect, save and manage ice cores from selected glaciers in danger of degradation or disappearance. And we are glad to confirm the participation in the high-level coalition ambition on melting ice on sea level rise and mountain water resources established in 2022 by Chile and Iceland. Our country is also a committed partner in developing a future strategy for an integrated circumpolar observing system throughout the Antarctica in SYNC, International Science and Infrastructure for Synchronous Observation Effort. Let me underline that the Italian government is keen to continue supporting scientific research in polar regions, also at European level, and to reinforce its commitment in the coming years. Also in view of the International Polar Years 2032-2033, and the establishment of the International Year of Glaciers Preservation in 2025. Thanks to Italy's tripolar approach, which is based on our coordinated commitment to the Arctic, Antarctic, and the Third Pole, aiming to co-design a unified national polar program for the coming future. I'm sure we will be able to bring an essential added value to the achievement of our international common goals. Italy strongly believes that citizens of all ages, starting with youth, should be encouraged to become active promoters of the protection of polar regions through enhancing relevant education and training opportunities, and by encouraging them to co-create and co-monitor a shared polar awareness based on an environmentally conscious development. In conclusion, I would like to thank the countries and actors involved in this valuable exercise for the work we have been able to carry out together so far. We are writing down the next steps towards the future we're trying to build. Therefore, Italy fully endorses the Paris call for glaciers and poles. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. I promise we will give our part of the Concordia refurbishment, 15 million. Madame Lemke, Germany was extremely crucial in this One Planet Summit because, you know, your compatriot Antje Boetius was really the scientific co-chair with Jérôme Chaplaz, and we are happy to share all together Germany and France the station of AVIPEV, so I'm pleased to give you the floor. Steffi Lemke, Minister for Environment and Protection of Nature, Nuclear Security, and something else, no?
Consumer protection also, but it's not so important today here. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, liebe Antje, first of all, let me say thank you to France to start this event, to bring those people which sit down here all together in this room, in this city, and in this discussion we need. A few weeks ago, we heard the news that bird flu has reached Antarctica, and this is a really horrible news. It's a threat to penguins and other seabirds in the Southern Ocean. And a recently published study concludes that we can expect the West Antarctic ice sheet to melt at an increasingly rapid pace. You all know this, but I'm afraid that a lot of people doesn't know. Two of many findings that show how vulnerable and at risk Antarctic ecosystems are. The developments in the polar regions affect us all, and these regions play a key role in the global climate system and in preserving marine biodiversity. It is very unfortunate that the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources was not able to agree on new protected areas at its recent meeting for a long time. This is a goal that Germany, France, and many others have been working towards for years in the Commission. And this is precisely why I would like to voice my support here today for close international cooperation. We can only achieve effective protection for the polar regions by working together. Key successes for the international community in recent months prove that major progress on biodiversity conservation is possible. The agreement on the global biodiversity framework and its goal of protecting at least 30% of global marine areas by 2030 is a really historic outcome to negotiations. The same applies to the UN BBNG agreement, which Germany signed in September together with France, the EU, and 80 other countries. Now, it is important to implement these agreements as quickly as possible. They give us a momentum for our joint efforts to better protect the marine environment, including in the polar regions, with their unique marine biodiversity. The German government strongly advocates ambitious environmental protection in the polar regions at all levels. This includes supporting the work in the Arctic Council with our expertise in our capacity of observer country. Together with our contracting parties to the OSPAR Convention, we have committed to developing a network of protected areas by 2030 that covers at least 30% of the total OSPAR marine region. In the 2021 Cascais Ministerial Declaration, Germany and the other contracting parties committed to protecting the Arctic marine environment and to agreeing on a roadmap by 2025. In my opinion, it is essential to cooperate closely with the Arctic indigenous people at all stages. It is their regions that are mainly affected, and they have a wealth of experience and expertise that is crucial to conserving Arctic nature. The German Environment Ministry is working in projects with Arctic indigenous groups as equal partners. The German government is also currently updating its 2019 guidelines on German Arctic policy. One key objective is to resolutely apply the precautionary and polluter pays principles to counteract the growing pressure for use on the melting regions in the Arctic. And last but not least, we should also keep a focus on Antarctica. Environmental concerns are already part of the treaty system. But we need to build on this. It is especially important that we enhance the precautionary principle, for example, through better regulation of tourism. Ladies and gentlemen, a few years ago, researchers from more than 80 institutions from 20 countries and with 37 different nationalities collaborated on the large-scale Mosaic expedition in the Arctic on the Polarstern research ship. This key flagship of polar research has just set sail again from its home port of Bremerhaven. It has been used for over It has been used for over 15 expeditions since 1982. Its team is its team of international scientists research. Thank you so much. Its team of international scientists researched the impacts of the climate crisis on the poles and on us all. The dedicated commitment of this team can be an example to us all. Let us work together and go full steam ahead to protect the polar regions. Thank you.
Due to the glaciers melting, we are going to lack water, you know. Please. We are very happy to have a message which was sent from Washington, D.C., from the White House by John Kerry, the special envoy for climate of the President Biden. The message is quite long, so it's 15 minutes. So we are not going to see all this video, but let's say 2 minutes from John Kerry, who was committed already for an important meeting in his country. But if you want to send us this message on MPAs, which will be appreciated by Geneviève Pons and all the Antarctica defenders.
We must work together and further strengthen our cooperation on these critical issues in our existing venues. The Arctic Council is the preeminent forum for Arctic cooperation. And I'm very grateful to Norway for steering us into a new chairship. Our priorities as the United States are reflected in our national strategy for the Arctic region. It was released last year. It addresses climate and environmental change at the top of our priorities for work in the region, recognizing that Arctic countries have the primary responsibility for addressing these challenges within the Arctic. Within Antarctica, we are confident that efforts within the treaty system to advance work on climate crisis will generate new momentum. And in 2016, we worked hard together within the Commission for the conservation of Arctic marine living resources, or CAMLR as we call it, in order to designate the largest marine protected area in the world, the Ross Sea region, MPA. This was, my friends, a really significant achievement. It had been bottled up and trapped for 10 years or more, and we were able to get Russia and US and China and others to cooperate, and now we have to build on that cooperation. Additional marine protected areas, particularly in the Antarctic Peninsula, are necessary and imperative in order to enable the unique Antarctic ecosystem to withstand the effects of the climate crisis. I truly encourage every one of you here today to redouble our efforts on this matter. It is crystal clear to all of us that we just don't have time to waste in order to confront these challenges. And we have seen to the far north of our countries, the polar regions are warming at the fastest rate globally. That means that our efforts to prevent and prepare for these rapid changes has got to move even faster, particularly for those native and indigenous communities who find their traditional ways of life existentially threatened.
Thank you, John. So we are going to make a trip to Antarctica. And how to speak about Antarctica without inviting Australia, especially Tim Watts. I'm very happy to welcome the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. We are so pleased to have you. You made a long trip. And I would like to thank you also because you endorse the Paris Call for Poles and Glaciers. I got your ambassador. So we are very happy to have you. You are a very important country for polar research. So please, Tim.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. I've come a long way, not quite as far as the South Pole, but very nearly so. Thank you, Ambassador, ministers, experts, scientists, attendees at this important summit. Thank you, France, for hosting this important One Planet Polar Summit. Few nations anywhere in the world can match France's deep commitment to the cause of polar exploration and research, particularly in the Antarctic. That was true nearly 3 centuries ago when Jean-Baptiste Bouvet de Lozier, visiting the Southern Ocean, was the first person to describe tabular icebergs. It was true nearly 2 centuries ago when Jules Dumont d'Urville set sail for the South Magnetic Pole. And it was true more than a century ago when Jean-Baptiste Charcot became the first French person to winter in Antarctica. And it is still true today, with France a critical member, with Australia, another country with a proud Antarctic history, of the global effort to fight global warming and to protect the Earth's critical polar regions. In 2023, we know that global warming will have a profound impact and a dangerous impact on Earth's polar regions, with significant implications for the rest of the world. Global warming's impact in Antarctica will add to the global mean sea level rise, a huge challenge for Pacific nations. And it will deepen the challenge of ocean acidification, and it will bring significant challenges and significant changes to the world's ocean currents, impacting food and water security. It threatens the unique and fragile havens of biodiversity in the southern oceans, including through reduced sea ice. Australia joins with France and other nations who have increased their 2030 emissions reduction targets to push harder and for further and deeper cuts. We have increased our emission reduction target to 43% below 2005 levels by 2030 and enshrined that target as a minimum in law. And we are implementing a comprehensive suite of new policies to drive the transition to net zero emissions. But the urgency of our task is clear. Together, we need to ensure that international discussions about climate change mitigation and adaptation are informed by Antarctic climate change research, including understanding the global implications of changes in the Antarctic region. As such, Australia is pleased to join with France and others at the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting in June, the Helsinki Declaration on Climate Change and Antarctica. For our part, Australia looks forward to continuing our long partnership with France and other countries on scientific research and the Antarctic continent. We are so privileged to work together on this important agenda for the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Monaco is not so big, you know, but you are so active for the protection of the planet. Prince Albert, the second, will be tomorrow with his colleagues, head of state and government, and he has been crucial and instrumental for the MPA, the Rose MPA in 2016. So I'm pleased to invite Isabelle Bérois-Madel with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of la Principauté de Monaco.
Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres,
Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to greet the organizers of this first international summit on the poles at the initiative of the French president. This event is an opportunity to better understand why the disappearance of the cryosphere is to be considered as one of the major challenges of our century. The facts are clear and indisputable. In this regard, I would like to thank the representatives of the civil society, of the scientific and economic community, but also indigenous peoples and local communities whose research and knowledge attest to the changes underway. There can be no doubt it is imperative for us to work together to act urgently. As you know, the commitment of my country for the protection of the environment is rooted in the historical scientific interest that has been defended by the princes of Monaco over the centuries. Prince Albert II is personally committed to the polar regions that are so vulnerable and wanted Monaco to be part of those nations that play an active role in the preservation of these unique ecosystems. In this approach, the Principality supports the development of knowledge and strengthening the interface between policies and science. Our actions must be based on science that are solid and accessible so that they may be understood and endorsed by the greatest number. This is why the Principality has asked the IPCC to look into the impact of climate change on the cryosphere and oceans, thus yielding the special report on cryosphere in the context of climate change that was adopted in Monaco in 2019. In terms of policies, Monaco maintains its position on the international stage with strong precautionary measures to preserve polar ecosystems. And is in line with this commitment that the Principality was one of the first states to support the initiative Ambition for Ice that was launched by the governments of Chile and Iceland during the COP27 that was held in Sharm el-Sheikh last year. Furthermore, we can count on civil society and the scientific community of Monaco, with many initiatives and projects, make it possible to convey the message on the urgency to act. We have a special division on polar biology, and their work makes it possible to better understand the effect of global change on polar ecosystems and the biodiversity to be found there. The Oceanographic Institute and the Albert Foundation since 1906 brings together scientists, policymakers, and economic experts around the major topics. And of course, the Albert II Foundation plays a primary role through projects such as the Polar Initiative that bring together stakeholders from different walks of life to involve them deeply. The goal is to strengthen their influence and their impact in this area. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, only collective action will make it possible to limit the repercussions of climate change on planet Earth and its inhabitants. As we approach the first stock take that will take place at the COP28, I would like to reaffirm solemnly that the alarm systems from the cryosphere that show that we are about to reach a critical threshold means that we must adopt drastic measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In this context, protecting the poles and the cryosphere is an imperative that simply cannot be avoided. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la Ministre, d'avoir rejoint.
Thank you, Minister, for fostering this issue upon the Paris call. Now, I'm going to call on, this is a video, and I think that you are aware of this video performed by Daikin, a famous scientific expert who gave explanations with Antje and Jérôme. And the Vice President will be in Paris, the Vice President of China. So we're going to listen to this gentleman.
Warming is unequal and accelerating. One of these consequences is the retreat of cryosphere. Mountain glaciers, ice sheets, permafrost, and sea ice are melting. At the alarm, evidences show that glacier collapse and large thermal cluster over permafrost region in high mountain Asia are occurring. Scientists warn that the half of glaciers are estimated to disappear by 2100. A collapse cryosphere will induce far-reaching consequences, including sea level rising, cascading breakout of tipping elements, as well as the severe impacts on water resources and wildlife habitats. Innovative strategy to mitigating negative consequences are needed. Adaptation capacity and climate resilience need to be enhanced. The action window is closing. Only taking the responsibility and action immediately, we can safeguard our planet and shape a sustainable future.
Voilà, from Beijing to Sofia, please, Julian. From Beijing to Sofia, we are very happy to have the Minister, Julian Popov, from Environment and Water. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you very much, and thank you, my colleagues from France, for organizing this excellent meeting ahead of COP28. I'm also very glad to be here in the shadow of two great Bulgarian women, the Commissioner Iliana Ivanova and Director General of DG Mare, Cherlina Vicheva, who is a key figure in the European Commission on sea issues. Many of you might wonder what has Bulgaria to do with ice and POS, but the interesting fact is that Bulgaria joined the Antarctic Treaty in 1978, and it became acquired a consultative status in the treaty in 1998, becoming one of the 28 nations that is engaged in the process with consultative status on Antarctic. In 1988, we also built our Antarctic base, which is operating very successfully until now and cooperating with many countries. As I speak, a Bulgarian ship that is visiting and going to our Antarctic base is moving across the ocean in that direction. I was invited, but I have other things to do, unfortunately. The Antarctic and the research that we are doing is extremely important for Bulgaria, and it is probably sending a message that research on the poles is a global issue, and this global issue must be addressed and must engage all countries around the world, because we're so connected with each other through climate, so that we must have much more closer scientific cooperation in that field. And this is also the reason why we will present our research and results of our research at COP28, and I would like to invite everybody here who will attend COP28 in Dubai. We will have quite a sizable pavilion, and one of our key presentations there will be on our Antarctic research. We also wanted to host COP29, and as many of you probably know, COP29, Bulgaria is a candidate for hosting COP29. Unfortunately, we're blocked by some weird procedure inside the UN regional groups by Russia, and probably we will not be able to do that, but we will continue to fight for focusing the climate science and climate research and action on Central and Eastern Europe, a region that has been traditionally ignored or ignoring this issue, but I think it's extremely important. And as final words, I would like to say that we do need more science, so I'm absolutely delighted to be in this scientific community here and to appeal for more science, more funding for science, and more focus on science and global science cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's stay in the east part of Europe. Your scientists are very committed for polar issues. I'm very pleased to invite the director of the National Center for Antarctic Research from Ukraine, Evgen Diki.
Dear delegates, dear ministers, dear participants, dear colleagues. In first, I thank French for organizing this very non-typical, very interesting event, which unite three very different powers. The power of knowledge from research society, the strong but sometimes slow power of politicals and governments, and the soft power of civil society. And this event unites these three powers in one global movement for the protection, or maybe now we need to talk not about protection but about rescue operation for our cryosphere. And we thank the French for invitation Ukraine took part in this global movement. You know, near the 2 years, our life is very different from all other in this room, because from the February of last year starting and now continuation, the Russian military aggression against our country. In the time of global warming, we have in last winter the small local ice age when the Russian rockets crash our energetic system. But in these very dark and hard times for our nation, when we every day need fight for our existence, for our freedom, and in one time fight for the world with international law, world with rules by law and rights. In this time, we remember our responsibility not only about our country, but about our planet also. Today is 625th day of our independence war, and all these days we continue our measures and research in Antarctica. We have not one day gap in this long-term research program in our Antarctic base Vernadsky, because it is our small part of big global measures in polar regions. Around our station, we directly look at the drastic changes in marine ice cover. If 10 years ago, 9 or 10 months in a year, our station was closed by sea ice, and only 2 or 3 months we can window for the open water. But now it's we look dramatical changes. This year, in the middle of Antarctic winter, we have not ice cover around our station. 12 months in a year, we not look ice cover, only small floating pieces of ice in sea. And we look dramatical changes in ecosystems moved by this shrinking of ice. We This year we counted the largest amount of dead Weddell seals because these animals need ice cover, big pieces of floating ice for their birth and for the milk feeding of his puppies. And this year we accounting tens of dead young Weddell seals only before he have not eyes. And, we look on these big creatures, but we think about next step. We think about small but keystone creations, the Antarctic krill. All life cycle of Antarctic krill is depends from ice dynamic. And if we look in Antarctic krill population dynamics, a tendency like in Weddell seals, can start the drastic process in all food chain in South Ocean. I will. This year Ukraine is chair country in CAMLR. And we used this opportunity for strong support for initiative of European Union and some other countries for making new big protected areas in Western Antarctic and in Weddell Sea. And of course, we totally agree with proposed by French declaration of this summit. And we hope this document not to be only declaration, but is the first step to the real action plan for saving our cryosphere. We need this action plan not tomorrow, but yesterday, and the right time start is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. Vive l'Ukraine. We are with you. Madame la représentante de l'espace, secrétaire général de la recherche.
Spain.
Ouais.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, on behalf of the Spanish government, I would like to thank the French government for organizing such an important summit and bringing together so many experts, and especially for calling to action. And as president of the Spanish Polar Committee and the highest authority on polar matters in the country, I am in a position to reaffirm our country's dedication and engagement in polar affairs and fighting climate change, not only from a political perspective, but also for a scientific one, which constitutes the primary focus of our commitment in both the Arctic and the Antarctic. And over these days, you have had the opportunity to learn from the scientists, the NGOs, and from the local communities in the sessions. And we all know that climate change is exerting a significant impact on polar regions, including the third pole, and the repercussions for the rest of the globe cannot be underestimated anymore. In Spain, we endorsed all the efforts to reduce carbon emissions and other greenhouse gases, and additionally, we emphasized the importance of research and innovations as the key means to enhance our modeling endeavors and thereby aid in mitigating the severe consequences of global change. Spain boasts a long-standing tradition of conducting research in the polar regions with greater emphasis on the Antarctic, having undertaken 37 consecutive Antarctic expeditions, even during the most challenging periods of financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. And this underscores our dedication to Antarctic issues. The collective efforts of scientists, technicians,
politicians and decision makers over the decades have elevated our country's commitment, leading us to actively participate in all polar forums. Our officers play pivotal roles in numerous instances, such as the co-leading the Working Group 2 in the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting, chairing COMNAP and presiding over ESCAR. In the Arctic, our observer status also affords us the opportunity to engage with the working group. While Spain acknowledged that the carbon emissions generated during Antarctic activities are relatively minor, we regard setting an example as a positive step. We are investing resources and efforts in reducing our carbon emissions through logistic optimization, as well as through research and innovation focused on decarbonization. This involves not only reducing energy demands, but also utilizing eco-friendly materials that enable the installation of a new zero-energy model. We are highly optimistic about the forthcoming years. We believe that researchers will have the opportunity in the coming decades to generate the unprecedented scientific knowledge thanks to initiatives like the International Polar Year in 2032 and other extraordinarily large endeavors such as InSync in Antarctica. Furthermore, I wish to affirm Spain's commitment to supporting the Paris Declaration that will be presented tomorrow, a critical framework in our global efforts to combat climate change and safeguard our planet for future generations. Together, through concerted international actions, we can make a meaningful difference in preserving the delicate balance in our polar regions and in the broader environment. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Minister.
To make a small trip to the glaciers, and then we will finish with Arctic. The glaciers, most of you have glaciers in their country or their continents. There is somebody who is very committed about our issues. Who fortunately is the General Secretary of the UN. Guterres, you know, has really strong works on sea level rise and melting ice. He was last week in Himalaya. That's the occasion for me to say the president of Nepal was supposed to come, and fortunately due to the earthquake he has to stay in this country, but to thank all our Nepalese friends from this mode who are here. Let's have a short video from Antonio Guterres just nearby the Himalaya summits.
I'm here in the Himalayas where glaciers are melting at the record level, like in Greenland, like in Antarctica. Sea levels are rising, and here we see floods, we see landslides, we see communities being dramatically impacted. We must stop this madness. We must make sure that we limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. Glaciers are retreating. We cannot retreat. We must move forward with climate action.
Voilà, peu de mots, mais beaucoup de réalité.
This is, in few words, it describes a sad reality. I'd like to welcome the Secretary of State for Innovation and Research to take the floor. She represents a very committed country in this respect, on these topics, with a call to protect glaciers. Minister, and your president will be speaking to this matter tomorrow. Thank you very much, Minister. Dear ministers,
dear representatives of the research community, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to represent Switzerland at this important gathering where leading persons from science and policy come together to join their efforts. Our paramount concern centers on polar and glacial issues, which are of great significance. Switzerland, as an alpine nation, is profoundly impacted by this matter. The changes are evident, noticeable within a human lifetime. Switzerland is also a country of science and research. As the State Secretary for Research, I salute the tireless commitment of our research community to document and understand climate change and its effects on the cryosphere. This summit underscores the power of international collaboration, recognizing that together we can achieve much more than we ever could alone. It is in this spirit that I'm pleased to announce today that two key polar research institutions, the Swiss Polar Institute and the French Polar Institute, Paul-Émile Victor, will sign a memorandum of understanding, marking a significant step in accelerating cooperation. This collaboration builds on a long tradition of scientific cooperation and will further strengthen our joint efforts to address climate challenges. I hope that such international collaborations will multiply in the future. I would also like to highlight the essential role played in this field by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Both embody the international community's efforts to combat the climate crisis. I have listened with attention to the experts' conclusions. Their message is clear. We are at a crossroad where bridging the gap between science and politics is more crucial than ever. Rapid changes in our vulnerable regions demand our immediate attention. By reducing greenhouse gas emissions and limiting the global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we can protect a substantial portion of our glaciers with the prospect of their regeneration. Science shows us the way. It is now our collective responsibility to translate this knowledge into action. I extend my heartfelt thanks to France to organize this summit, which represents an important step towards the future which we wish for the next generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Minister. Let's carry on our trip to Antarctica, who is going to bring us to Pakistan with Madam Ali Sidi, who is the Minister of Education. So we are very pleased to have you coming, especially in Paris. Really, thank you so much.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, ministers, good evening. At outside, I want to express my deepest appreciation for this important initiative, being the world act together to safeguard our fragile glacier ecosystem, an ecosystem with far-reaching concurrent importance, very survival. The third pole, comparing of the Himalaya, Karakoram, and Hindu Kush, spanning across Pakistan, China, Nepal, and India, holds the largest reserves of earth glaciers of the polar region. Pakistan alone estimated to have over 70,000 glaciers in the Hindu Kush range, covering in approximately area of 15,000 square kilometers. The third pool is the world's most substantial reserves due to significant elements, being the primary source for many of our major rivers, also mighty Sindhu. It is also critical for freshwater supply of around 2 billion peoples. Our reliance on the glaciers can be determined from these figures. Excellence, Hindu Kush region is a particularly sensitive climate change. The IPCC's 6th assignment project further global temperature increase of 1.24 cc by the end of the 21st century. The warming trend has triggered significant glacial melt, raising 20 loose of ice mass over in last 50 years. Our glaciers, food security and all under the threat, and our avalanche and glaciers lake outbursts, GLO risk increase. One example of GLO event in Pakistan is the 220s Shepar Glacier. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to underscore the prominent significance of robust climate leadership on the world stage. This sentiment, government, scientific, business and civil society taking decision action of combat climate change in the polar region. It is of utmost important that we forgot international lines, so safeguards these unique ecosystem from the outcomes of climate change. We, Pakistan, is a nation, are willing to offer our strong commitment climate action, but we need the world to work along with us. Pakistan is committed to play its role in critical issue of its polar region and climate change implementation on these visual glaciers. This is a part of global responsibility. We must work together crossing through the always fragile sustainable policies and proper steps towards significance these fragile ecosystem. Pakistan seeks to join hands with international committee, active role in shaping policy, fostering international cooperation, and for the preservation of polar and world's glacier region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We are very happy because Kazakhstan is a very committed country for glaciers, and we have the pleasure to have the special envoy for the President of Kazakhstan, Zulfiya Zulaymenoyeva. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all at this important event, and thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share our perspective. I would like to welcome the initiative to hold the One Planet Polar Summit, drawing special attention to this important issue. I come from the country which is known as a steppe country. But as much as we have steppes, we also have snow-peaked mountains with glaciers, which provide us with precious freshwater resources. Up to 70% of the river flow depends on them. But our glaciers are retreating. The speed at which Central Asia's glaciers are decreasing is among the largest in the world. In the last 60 years, glaciers in the Tian Shan, Pamir Alai, and Altai mountains were retreating by 0.7% in surface and were losing 1% in volume annually. Essentially, they lost 1/3 of their volume in the past half a century, and these processes are continuing. The 6th IPCC assessment report did not give any optimistic verdict for the future either. The water towers of our region, Central Asia, may disappear by 2100 completely. Kazakhstan knows the consequences of such environmental catastrophes firsthand. The interconnection between glaciers and steppes in our part of the world provides a very striking example of what might happen if the concrete actions to alter current climate change scenarios are not accelerated. The almost complete disappearance of the once 4th largest lake, the Aral Sea, in just half a century is a clear example of the consequences of decreased water flow into sustaining the lake's ecosystem. The world is very interconnected. The climate action can only be successful if every country takes concrete actions. Kazakhstan is fully committed to global temperature goal and committed to achieving the carbon neutrality by 2060. Historically, our economy relies on coal, but we understand that the end of the coal age is quickly approaching. gradual and socially responsible approach to phasing out the coal is critical for us. To make that happen, not only in Kazakhstan, but in the region of Central Asia, we plan to establish a project office for Central Asia on climate change and green energy to promote and accelerate concrete actions for energy transition and decarbonization of carbon-intensive sectors in our countries. It is time for action. But as much as mitigation is critical, the temperature in our region is growing on average 2 times faster than the world's. Even if the global temperature grows by 1.5 degrees, this will result in the growth of temperature by 2–2.5 degrees in Central Asia. Respectively, climate change adaptation measures are vital. We've started implementation of the climate change adaptation process into the planning processes in the most vulnerable sectors, including water-related ecosystems and disaster risk reduction. The latter, with melting of the glaciers, has increased the risks of outbursts of glacial lakes and mud flows. In conclusion, I would like to mention that these processes require accelerating the global climate action. Without concerted actions, averting the degradation of the cryosphere is impossible. And for the global actions to be successful, acceleration of regional approaches and actions is critical. In Central Asia, we plan to conduct Regional Climate Summit under the UN auspices in 2026, under which we plan to synergize, complement and maximize existing actions in the region for climate. That also includes closer work in respect to understanding, observing, but most importantly, preserving our water towers, the glaciers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you. Now it's time for women. I will ask, to finish our trip in Antarctica, to ask Beatriz Fuente Alba, who's the CEO of Ishi. You are here, please. As time is passing, so the shorter you are, the better you will be appreciated. Okay, I'm sure. Let me check. No, please. You are the CEO of the glaciers and ecosystem, mountain ecosystem in your country, Peru.
Yeah. Dear ministers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by congratulating the government of France for hosting and organizing such a successful meeting for attract greater international attention for a crucial issue for the health of the planet and the people in general. I also like to thank for the opportunity to share some ideas and reflections for the experience of Peru in my capacity as Executive President of the National Institute for Research on Glaciers and Mountain Ecosystems of the Ministry of Environment in Peru. Our office is located in one of the most representative mountain and glacier areas of Peru, the Ancash region, a territory where developed important cultures that were at the origin of the Andean civilization large before the Incas empire prospered. As many of you are aware, 68 of the world's tropical glaciers are located in Peru. And despite the national effort that we have made in recent years, we have unfortunately lost more than 50% of these glaciers since 1962. And now we live in the middle of the dramatic consequences of this in the daily life of the people and in the environment in general. As a colleague said yesterday in his speech, glaciers are water, and water gives us life. But sometimes water also takes life away from us. In Peru, the institute that I run focuses mainly on research on glaciers and mountain ecosystems. We, like many other researchers, have shown that the loss of glacier mass reduces the amount of water available, mainly during the dry season. It also generates process of acidification and water pollution in mountain ecosystems, affecting the livelihoods of the local population. In addition, The loss of glaciers mass also increased the risk of GLOF, glacier lake outburst, flood, and landslides. We all know that the main problem is climate change, and the debate during these 2 years confirmed that the solution to these problems cannot come from the effort of a single country. Therefore, we highlight the value of organizing this meeting, because we strongly believe that international cooperation is key, in particular between governments, scientists, and other stakeholders, to find solutions. In particular, new adaptation alternatives based on traditional knowledge, or to establish regional monitoring systems and early warning systems. We also share the main concerns regarding the poles, mainly on the Antarctic, where Peru develops research projects as a member of Antarctic Treaty and as a large coastal state impacted by the cold ocean waters coming from there. To achieve the goal that the global temperature should not increase more than 1.5 degrees, it is urgently that we agreed on concerns actions that should strengthen the follow-up, the implementation of commitments we had agreed to in multilateral frameworks. The multilateral systems, that means all of us, has another big opportunity to show its strength in the forthcoming COP28 at Abu Dhabi next month. Peru is ready to articulate this national effort for the work of this summit in order to advance in the implementation of solutions to the problems we are discussing through international cooperation and solidarity. With this vision, we will support the commitments of this declaration of this summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support. Then, before going to Arctic and giving the floor to our minister coming from UK, I will ask EU to say a small statement. We have the pleasure to have Shalina Vicheva, who is the Director of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. Shalina.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much, Olivier. And of course, words of praises for what France initiated. And it's extremely important and so logical on the run-up to the UN conference that you're going to host in Nice in 2025 and in the run-up to COP28. So the European Union does a lot, and we've heard already from Commissioner Iliana Ivanova about the research effort, which is huge, versatile, and incorporating so many aspects, very comprehensive. So I actually head the Directorate General that deals with fisheries and ocean affairs, and for the 3 minutes that I have, I picked to treat 3 issues. And I would like to first reassure everyone that according to the competencies that we have as European Union, but also synchronizing the efforts with the member states, you have to rest reassured that we are supporting truly the global effort to limit the climate change, to mitigate as much as we have on the table, so that we don't have this high cost for adaptation. The bigger the effort on mitigation, the less the effort on the adaptation. So the first thing that I would like to say is on the Arctic. And on the Arctic, one of the top initiatives that we recently had was to revise our Arctic policy. That happened in 2021, and I would like to say a couple of things about the revised Arctic policy. So first of all, despite all the turmoil, all the tensions and regional rivalries that we have, we maintain that climate change remains the most acute threat for the Arctic. And I'm not going to go into too much figures because we have the chair of the IPCC that knows best, but I will mention 2 things. It is clear that the last 12 months will be the top record of heat that we experienced on Earth in the last 125,000 years. How do we know? You can turn to the chair of the IPCC. It is verifiable. When we put that together with the fact that in the two poles, the average heating goes much higher than the global average, then we come to the statement of the Secretary General of UN that we had just now on the screen, that we are not anymore experiencing global warming, but global boiling. And if that happens in the poles, that will be a catastrophe. But we are here not to be dooming and glooming. It is clear that we can still avoid this global boiling. And that's why we need the common effort, and the European Union is very clear about that, in order to make all that is necessary in order to stop the climate change. So climate change, the biggest issue for the Arctic. What I would like to say, and it was said also by the representative of the indigenous people, one of the revisited top priorities of our Arctic policy is that we have to work with the indigenous population that is suffering the most from what is going on around the poles. And we as the EU are working very closely with, for example, with OSPAR on science-driven precautionary approach, exactly the same way as we do in the Central Arctic Ocean Fisheries Agreement. So precaution, precaution, precaution. Now I will switch to the Antarctica, and many of you talked about the Commission for the Conservation of the Antarctic Living Resources. And I have to say that we are really proud that it was exactly the European Union and its member states that suggested 2 huge marine protected areas to be established on the CCAMLR. One of them was proposed in 2012 and the other one in 2016. And we are still struggling very hard that these MPAs are adopted. We lost 1 year more because in the last annual session of CCAMLR, we couldn't achieve this goal because of the reticence and reluctance of some of the members of this organization. But what I have to tell you, that our relentless effort brought out of the 27 members, 20 countries that are co-proponents now of these 2 MPAs suggestions. And I hope that we can achieve finally what we are aiming at in the next annual session. So, and why it is so important, we heard from our Ukrainian colleague, because what happens there in the Antarctic is so important for the overall ocean food web. So without having the MPAs, the marine protected areas in the Antarctic, we will be failing on the biodiversity loss and biodiversity strategy that we have committed to. And last, third point, many of you were talking about structuring the process, and I'm really happy that we have the chair of IPCC. Unfortunately, for the ocean/polar, we don't have this science policy interface that we have for climate change or for biodiversity. So what we suggested in our international ocean governance strategy is to create an intergovernmental panel on ocean sustainability. And what we did was a first assessment of where the science is, and what we see is that actually it is very, very fragmented. So we will only benefit if we have such an intergovernmental panel, and we will continue our efforts, and I hope that in this we will be able to congratulate ourselves with the final decision for that. Thank you very much.
That's good news. David, I'll invite 2 ministers. One is a diplomat, but not by career, but at the Foreign Office in London, and just after our friend from Prague, David.
Thank you.
David Rutley.
It's a real honour to be here and to listen to such compelling speeches. And I'd like to thank our French colleagues for hosting this really important summit over the next few days. As a keen climber and mountaineer, I've witnessed climate change in real time over the decades, and most recently in Bolivia's Chacchini Glacier, which is sadly retreating really fast and thinning 1.5 meters every year. And what we've heard today from eminent scientists and from explorers much more accomplished than me reinforces why this demands our immediate action. Exploration and science, of course, go hand in hand, and the extremities of the Earth, the poles and the mountains, have long whetted our appetite for both. The UK has a rich history of polar exploration, from Captain Cook to Franklin, and from Shackleton to Scott. Stories of human endeavour and hardship to better understand the world around us. Captain Scott's Terra Nova expedition to Antarctica in 1910 collected 40,000 scientific samples, and many of these are still used as a reference now. Indeed, the discoveries of explorers have underpinned our fundamental understanding of our impact in the world today. And we were fortunate to hear from the British Antarctic Survey team this afternoon, of which we're particularly proud. And it was, of course, the British Antarctic Survey that discovered the ozone hole in 1985, now warming up to 10 times faster than the rest of the planet. The poles act as harbingers of the global impacts of climate change. So the UK is firmly committed to the Antarctic Treaty System. Together with Norway, we pushed to get climate change onto the agenda of annual meetings of treaty parties. We encourage the highest standards of responsible tourism, and we actively support collaborative science, that really important word. Just last week, I signed a new letter of intent on Antarctic cooperation with the government of Chile to facilitate exactly that. And we'll continue to strengthen our partnerships and collaborations and invest in our already substantive and substantial research, supported by the Science and Innovation Network of our embassies and our high commissions, using the state-of-the-art vessel, the Royal Research Ship, Sir David Attenborough, and through our further investment in our science stations and our capabilities. Our new Arctic policy framework, Looking North, sets out our ongoing support for the work of the Arctic Council and our commitment to work with others to protect the people, climate, and environment of the Arctic. In support of this, UK researchers have received £56 million in Arctic science funding since 2012, on top of the investments in infrastructure and other assets, such as our new polar research vessel. And we stand ready to increase our participation in the Arctic Council and its working groups even further. And we're looking at new opportunities like the safe and responsible role of artificial intelligence, on which we hosted a really important international summit last week. And we're already looking ahead to the 5th International Polar Year in 2030 and 2033. But science alone is not enough. As we've heard clearly today, glaciers are retreating, permafrost is thawing, sea ice is reducing, and the implications of these changes are global, and they are absolutely profound. So the UK will continue to play a leadership role on climate and nature action, and committed to our climate and biodiversity obligations. And we will go to COP28 determined to put the world back on track to keep the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees and to halve global emissions by 2030. And we support resilience and adaptation. And we're determined to halt and reverse global biodiversity loss by 2030, including by better valuing nature and the services it provides. We join others in calling for a moratorium on the granting of exploitation licenses for deep sea mining. these deep-sea mining projects by the International Seabed Authority, and will continue to put indigenous and local communities at the heart of this work, recognising their diversity and respecting their rights, views, cultures, and traditions. And finally, we'll also stand up for our shared values across the world to protect and assert our rights where others threaten our collective security. All this to better protect the natural and fragile environment on which we all depend, and for the greener, more resilient, secure, and prosperous future that we all desire and urgently need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you. Jerzy. I'm pleased to welcome Jerzy Lejček, who is Minister for Environment of the Czech Republic.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Thank you for inviting me, dear France. Czech Republic lost its fight already 11,000 years ago. Our last glacier vanished at that time, and that is, I believe this is the path which the global community doesn't want to follow. So we are here to share the experience. Today I listened to the stakeholders' recommendations before the lunch and after the lunch regarding the NGOs, science, communities, and many others. And what I got from the speeches that polar regions are the laboratories, not only the laboratories with as we understand them in a common view for science, environment, sustainability, but also the laboratories of diplomacy, peacemaking, and of course, climate change, first and foremost. Culture issues not to be forgotten. And this is the polar regions, I believe, and the third pole as well. They are also the test of humanity and humankind, if I may say, because if we fail there, then we can ask ourselves the questions what we are doing here. So me as a polar scientist as well, before I joined this the politician and this circus around, I can also witness what the Arctic and the Antarctic is changing. Even in a short period, I was visiting and researching there. So Czech Republic is contributing to the research, to the understanding of the Arctic and Antarctic by running 2 stations on both sides of in the both polar regions, and those stations are open to everybody. The doors are open. We have to open them not very often because of the energy consumption, obviously, but they are open to everybody who is committed to contribute to the polar research and to contribute to the understanding and combating the climate change. For that reason, we are also the Antarctic Treaty signatory party, and we have the consultation status. We are the first country which signed the Antarctic Treaty, actually. And we'd like to also become more active in the Arctic by joining the Arctic Council as an observer member and the European Polar Board. On the very end of my speech, I'd like to underline something what maybe has not been touched so far that often, although we all know it. And this is the immense beauty of the Arctic and Antarctic and the third pole. This is something completely unique in the whole world. And when I was working there, on the 6 expeditions, this is always something what is in the center of my heart. When I come back in the laboratory or back in the office, and I am sad, I always memorize what I saw and what I did in the Arctic. And this is something what drives me further. And I wish to everybody, and I believe that most of us here witness the beauty of the Arctic and the Antarctic. I wish everybody that we preserve this beautiful piece of land to the future generations, and that we all do it together. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Restons en Arctique, allons au Canada avec Madame.
Let's stay in the Arctic, and we'll go to Canada with the chief scientist from the Canadian government. Thank you very much. Thank you, Olivier, and thank you for this very successful meeting.
Their residents to adapt and respond to changing environments is anything but uniform. Consequently, no single organization, government, or agency can possibly tackle these challenges alone. In working together for solutions, we must be guided by multiple ways of knowing, including science, indigenous, and local knowledge. Et c'est là que cette réunion revêt toute son importance.
And this is where Canada can really play a role. We work closely with the international community in the Arctic area and Arctic sciences, and as you have heard today from our minister, we have many collaborations between Canada and France. I would like to greet the president of the CNRS, French Research Agency, who has supported all of these important initiatives.
Nations, and we intend to accelerate these collaborations in the years to come. As a key Arctic nation, I appreciate everyone remembers the geography, but it's always good to remind people that 3/4 of our land is in the Arctic. So research on the Arctic and its implications for the world are national priorities, and we look forward to continued partnership and leadership in this area. Canada has made multiple investments in both infrastructure and research programs, such as our flagship High Arctic Research Station that already has over 1/3 of its activity international researchers coming in. And our icebreaker, Amundsen, you heard from the minister again, they both already are international platforms. For 20 years now, Canada's Arctic research has been led by a center of excellence, a national center of excellence called ArcticNet, who co-developed for the first time Inuit-led and Inuit-governed research programs. ArcticNet research spans the many areas of urgent need of solutions in the Arctic, including health, of course, but also transportation, food security, biodiversity, while maintaining ongoing environmental monitoring. Building on these fundamental platforms, Canada is planning a major Arctic science mission for 2027-28 in preparation for the 5th International Polar Year in 2032-33. The Arctic Science Mission aims to bring together key international experts and knowledge holders, as well as assets and innovative technologies to bring in solutions to the Arctic. I hope you will all join us in the Canadian Arctic, where this will be happening, and you will experience exactly what I experienced, the beautiful landscapes and people, but you'll also see firsthand the rapid melting of the ice and the urgent problems that are facing the Arctic. Thank you, and I look forward to welcoming everyone in Canada.
Thank you, Madame. I'd like to know if Lydia Brito, who is just appointed as Assistant Director General for Nature Science at the UNESCO, congratulations, Madame, to say a few words. Only 10 minutes now, and then the end.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's a great honor, really, to address you at this One Planet Polar Summit here in Paris, and I want really to congratulate and thanks the government of France for this initiative. Really, it's been incredible, an incredible opportunity for us. We are very, very proud to be partners of this initiative, where researchers and scientists from over 40 glacier and polar nations have gathered to share their findings over the past 2 days. The urgency of our discussions must be amplified and they must be multiplied. The recent release IPCC report emphasizes the substantial damages caused by climate change, especially in polar ecosystems. With the retreat of glaciers and changes in the Arctic ecosystems, vulnerable populations face increasing challenges. Mountains, often referred to as the water towers, are crucial for global freshwater resources, with half of the world population relying on water from mountain headwaters. However, these sensitive ecosystems are deteriorating at an alarming rate, posing significant threats to livelihoods. UNESCO's commitment to addressing these challenges is evident through our various programs, such as the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program and our Man and Biosphere Program, among many others. We have supported glaciologists and hydrologists worldwide for over a half-century, conducting research on the cryospheric changes and their impact on water resources. Initiatives like the Andean Glacier and Water Atlas underscore our dedication to understanding and mitigating these effects. Our efforts extend to Central Asia, where we have launched scientific programs with substantial funding to map glaciers and establish early warning systems and enhance cryosphere management. UNESCO network of designated sites, including biosphere reserves and global geoparks with glaciers, actively participate in glacier studies and protection. We are initiating a study to analyze the impacts of glacier retreats and identify good practices in biosphere reserves, fostering international cooperation and raising awareness, and ensuring, as was said from the beginning today, really action. And we do so based on the values and principles of open science. It is fundamental that knowledge is available to all, so that actions can also benefit all. And that's why I was very happy that the several ministers mentioned the importance of scientific cooperation, and really here is an example. And I think you, Excellency, mentioned the open system and the data, and that is fundamental to change. I'm pleased to inform you that UNESCO, in coordination with WMO, is coordinating and facilitating the preparation of the International Year of Glaciers Preservation 2025, accompanied by the World Day of Glaciers on March 21st each year, that was adopted by the UNGA in 2022. This initiative aims to raise global awareness about the crucial role of glaciers, snow and ice in the climate system, and encourage exchange of knowledge and best practices in glacier preservation and adaptation strategies. To support these efforts, UNESCO is organizing in our general conference, and that's why I'm a little bit on a rush. UNESCO is organizing a side event during our 42 General Conference and invites the organizers and the participants of the One Planet Polar Summit to present its outcomes next week on the 14th of November. So please do come and share, because it's an important side event, because we will have our member states with us, and therefore that science policy interface can be strengthened. Additionally, we invite also the summit organizers to join our event at COP28 in the 5th of December in Dubai, emphasizing our collective commitment to glacier preservation. And really, I want to thank you all, and this afternoon has been really wonderful, and congratulations again, and count on us. Thank you.
Let's stay for a few minutes in Arctic countries, Finland and Norway. I'd like to invite our friend, the Finnish ambassador, to tell us a bit about the Arctic commitment for Finland.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to speak at this One Planet Summit, and I would like to thank France for hosting us. Climate change is an emergency, both in the Arctic and globally, and the Arctic is warming faster than the rest of the Earth. Some of the changes in the Arctic, Antarctic and mountainous regions are already irreversible, but holding the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees would substantially reduce the scale of harm and cost of damages. Avoiding the acceleration of these negative impacts requires immediate and remarkable emission reductions of global greenhouse gases and short-lived climate pollutants like black carbon. Science also tells us that we have hope if we work faster and harder all together. Finland is an Arctic nation, and the Arctic region, our region, is and will always remain an important priority for us. Finland is one of the 8 permanent member states of the Arctic Council, which remains as the preeminent format for circumpolar Arctic cooperation. In addition, Finland is also a member state of the Antarctic Treaty, and we recently hosted the annual Antarctic Treaty consultative meeting in Helsinki earlier this year. The Arctic Council has a key role to play as regards the Arctic governance. The strong role of the Indigenous Peoples Organization at all levels of the Council is internationally unique. Indigenous people who are at the very forefront of the adverse effects of climate change. The government of Finland has recently established a Sami Climate Council. The Council is a new independent expert body tasked with bringing the knowledge base and perspectives of the Sami people into the climate policy processes and scientific dialogue. The purpose of this internationally quite unique national body is to promote the right of indigenous people. Finland has set a legally binding target to become carbon neutral by 2035, in 12 years' time. And we have high ambition in terms of renewable energy targets. Nationally, our aim is to increase the use of renewable energy so that by 2030, its share will be more than half of Finland's energy and consumption. Finland is one of the founding governments of the ambition of melting ice, a high-level coalition established last year in COP27. We encourage all new members to join this group to single out collective action to make pre-2030 emission reductions. The availability of the critical minerals in the Northern Europe is attracting growing attention because they are the raw materials for the green transition and because of the need to increase the energy and resource self-sufficiency in Europe. However, it is important that the ecological and social impacts of the green transition will be assessed carefully. At the same time, both international and EU biodiversity strategies set targets for countries to enhance protection and restoration of ecosystem. Do no significant harm principle must be in the core of the decision-making of green transition. For this, we need a wide inclusion of society, citizens, indigenous people, academia, and stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard during this summit several times that every tenth of a degree matters. The climate COP28 meeting in Dubai will begin in 3 weeks. The main message is to urge deep, rapid and sustained emission reductions of greenhouse gases and short-lived climate pollutants by all countries in order to hold back the irreversible changes of cryosphere. Thank you very much.
Alors, on va aller en Norvège. On va aller en Norvège parce que on va apprendre des choses sur la science que je ne connais pas d'ailleurs. Tore?
Sorry, we're going to go to Norway. We're going to learn things about science.
Merci. Venez nous expliquer ce que vous faites. Please come explain what you are doing.
Il faut me le dire, bon sang.
Minister, delegates. I will be very brief. I will not talk about climate change, and I will not talk about the history of Norwegian polar research. But what I will do, I will talk about what we are doing within digital ocean systems and services. And this is something my institute, the Nansen Environmental and Remote Sensing Center, is doing together with the Norwegian Polar Institute, Norwegian Met Office, the Institute of Marine Research, and a long range of institutions in Europe. So this is part of the Copernicus Marine Services, and organized by Mercator Ocean International, based in Toulouse, where we are 10 shareholders from France, Italy, Spain, UK, and Norway. So what we are doing, we are running high-resolution ocean and sea ice models in real time. So we take millions of observations, both directly measured from the ocean and also measured from space. And these data, they are fed into the models, and they are used to explore why and how ocean and sea ice have developed during the last 30 years. We are running models to see how the state is today, and we are running the models to look into the future. And the data that are produced under the Copernicus services, they are free to use for everybody. There are numerous applications that are used for indicators and assessments for climate, for European Water Framework Directive, for management of fish stocks, planning of offshore wind parks, for safety and transport and tourism, to mention just a few. And one major problem is the lack of observations for the polar regions. And as we all have heard, that traditional ship-based measurements, they are very costly, and they come with very large climate gas emissions. So the solution is to have more autonomous buoys and gliders or drones that can operate underneath the ice. And one major obstacle is that there are no GPS signals underneath the ice. So we don't really know where the instruments are. So at the Nansen Center, we are now running a large project to establish a network of acoustic senders and receivers in the Arctic to use sound waves instead of radio waves for positioning and data retrieving. And during the One Planet Ocean Summit in Brest in February last year, the 5 shareholding countries I just mentioned, and also Portugal, signed a commitment to transform the Mercator Ocean International into an intergovernmental organization, and also to open up for more member states. And this process is well underway, thanks among others to the ambassador here, to the poles and ocean. So this process, if we are lucky, perhaps it can be announced a new IGO during the meeting in Nice next year. So just one more minute. Europe is well positioned to take a world lead when it comes to digital ocean systems and services, and also to raise it to the next level. So we see that cloud computing are speeding up the processes. We see that artificial intelligence or machine learning is coming into all steps in the value chain, from observations to forecast to services. And we also see that digital twins, which is virtual representations of the ocean or the polar regions, will be used for what-if scenarios. And that will make ocean knowledge more available for decision makers all around the world. So finally, if we can achieve this, then I think we can finally achieve the goals that was articulated under the UN Ocean Decade, the science we need for the ocean or the future we want. So, thank you.
We are finishing our world tour with, I'm very pleased to welcome Lila Devi Dokun Lonchum, qui est le ministre de l'Éducation et de l'Enseignement supérieur, de la Recherche scientifique de l'île.
Who is the Minister of Education and Human Resources of Higher Education and Scientific Research from Mauritius. You have the floor.
Island, but you are very concerned by what we are speaking about.
Very true. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, scientists, dear colleagues, allow me first of all to thank the organizers for this summit on topics that are important to us all. With global warming, we are looking at the change, the radical change of the polar regions that will lead to the melting of sea ice and the rise in the sea level. This is a danger, of course, for polar nations, but also for small island states that risk absolutely dramatic consequences of being partially or totally submerged, and these risks are ever more real today. The rise of the sea level will lead to flooding, erosion, and the retreat of the coastline. This is why the IPCC report on climate change published in 2023 shows that global warming beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius would lead to drastic changes in droughts, and that would lead simply to the collapse of agricultural and food systems of small island states. Located at the very heart of the Indian Ocean, Mauritius is part of the island states the most threatened. Mauritius has already had to deal with many catastrophes that are linked to global warming. Let me give you a few key figures. In Mauritius, we are dealing with a rise in temperature of about 1.4 degrees Celsius, a rise in the sea level that is close to 5.6 millimeters per year, whereas the average rise is 3.4 millimeters per year. A rise in the temperature of the ocean surface to 29 degrees, which is considerably higher than the world average. The consequence for Mauritius are absolutely dramatic. The rise in the temperature leads to the bleaching of corals that reduces corals by 34%. Coastal erosion is about 2 meters per year, and an alarming reduction of the width of beaches by 20 meters, up to 20 meters in some places. Beaches could simply disappear, and this will have a catastrophic effect on tourism, which is, of course, the pillars of our economy. This would lead to the loss of revenue that is considerable. In Mauritius, despite the fact that our emissions of greenhouse gases only amount for 0.01% of the total global emissions, we are doing our share when it comes to mitigation, adaptation, investment to combat climate change. In 2021, our national determined contribution was such that we committed to reduce our emissions by 40% by 2030 and to use green energies to the tune of 60%. The key mitigation measures are the promotion of renewable technologies, photovoltaics for solar energy to produce energy, promoting electric vehicles, on action plans on biomass. All of these measures trying to phase out the use of coal by 2030. The national strategy of mitigation also includes a policy to recycle in manufacturing and the building sectors. implementing our nationally determined contribution is estimated at $5.6 billion for mitigation and adaptation. The government of Mauritius will contribute 35% of the financial needs as estimated, with, of course, help from the private sector. However, additional financing of $4.2 billion will have to be raised from the international community. It is therefore critical that the developed countries respect and uphold their commitment to mobilize $100 billion per year to meet the needs of developing countries. We must stress that long-term financing is a key pillar of the Paris Agreement. Consequently, it is urgent. Financing, the multilateral financing institutions must certify procedures and accelerate access to financing, because financial resources are essential if we want to support world efforts to counter climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, glaciers, the poles, are increasingly at the heart of debate. We must act, and we must quickly. Let us give ourselves the resources to deal with the climate change, and let us work together to be efficient multilaterally, because the future of our planet and of future generations is at stake. And I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Voilà. Alors pour conclure, j'ai invité 3 personnes qui vont...
All right, so Pascal Lamy is our next speaker. The director of CNRS, and Greta, who is the new director of the IUCN. Please, you have the floor.
Venez, on va se faire un peu la team. Gretel.
Oui. On a besoin d'être plusieurs. Okay, so I've been listening very carefully to all the speeches of all the ministers and non-ministers. I'm not going to do a full-size conclusion or synthesis, but just the essentials. There are good news, and the good news is that we've successfully crossed the 2 first stages of the 3 we have to cross here before tomorrow. Noon, waiting for the 4th one, which will be action. In terms of knowledge, science, awareness, it's okay. We've all understood we have a big problem. And ministers have repeatedly recognized, acknowledged that we have a big problem. So that's good in a way, because we've crossed the first 2 steps. What's less positive, at least in my view, is that on the 3rd step, which is political decisions leading to action, we did not get a lot of meat, in my view. We got positive words, signals, intentions for more support for research, maybe more funding, intentions of words of more togetherness, that's all fine, but nothing very concrete. Now, there is one explanation for that, which is the one I privilege tonight, which is that ministers have left a lot of room for their heads to put meat on the bones. Whether this is the right explanation or not, we will see tomorrow. But I would just say that we still have one evening and one night to raise the game to the level of a summit that leads to not more intentions, but more actions. I hope you, ministers, and we all will use that time to that effect. We are here to push together, to get things done, in this collective endeavor, that the cryosphere needs more attention, that we need to work more, that this necessitates more political decisions, more resources, more cooperation. Whether this will be the case tomorrow, we still have to see one more evening, one more night to get there. Thanks.
Thank you. Is that your first public speech since you have been appointed? It is. Okay.
It is.
As a Director General of the UCN.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Olivier. Distinguished delegates, ministers, scientists, friends of the glaciers and poles. IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, would like to thank the government of France for organizing the One Planet Polar Summit, the first international conference for glaciers and poles. As the world's largest and most diverse environment network, with 16,000 experts and 1,500 members, including the government of France, IUCN welcomed the results of this summit, in particularly for highlighting the critical condition of the planet's frozen regions and for opening the door to indigenous peoples' organizations, non-governmental organizations, and the governments to share their knowledge, wisdom, and also their hopes. I see around this beautiful theater a lot of hopes and a lot of potential for continued cooperation. These precious ecosystems, collectively known, and you have been saying it the whole day, cryosphere, exert an important influence on Earth's climate. Conserving these ecosystems and the biodiversity within them is crucial for the future of life on the planet. As we have heard during these 2 days, this is complex work and requires not just deep scientific expertise, but also the ability to bridge science with the world of policy, and most importantly, action on the ground. It is therefore an honor for me to address you today at this concluding session. Over the past 2 days, you have also heard about the impacts of climate change on the polar and glacial regions, the consequences for flora and fauna, and the direct impacts on society. But we have also heard messages of hope. We have learned how coastal cities and regions can adapt to rising sea levels. We have learned what we can do to turn the tide and protect the fragile, frozen lands. We humans, we are responsible for what is happening in this planet, our only home. But we are also so capable to do things better. And I don't know you, but I am a positive, so by nature. So I want to believe, really, that by improving our science, by learning from each other, by doing the correct actions on the ground, and by collaborating with each other, we can change the course of action. IUCN welcomes the Paris call for glaciers and poles that states will sign tomorrow. This call resonates with other oceans and polar-related multilateral agreements, such as the Convention for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, as well as the Agreement of Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction. It also helps ensure that the global community meets the targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the Paris Agreement. These coordinated efforts come at the right moment. We are a few weeks away from the United Nations Climate Change Conference, you all know that, where we will see the outcomes of the first Paris Agreement global stocktake. This call will help place the oceans and the polar regions and glaciers of this planet at the center of the climate discussion. It is also my hope that the Paris call for glaciers and poles drives momentum on oceans governance forward, particularly as we prepare for the third United Nations Oceans Conference. taking place in June 2025 in the French city of Nice. IUCN is proud to contribute to this movement. Our 7 expert commissions, such as the Climate Crisis Commission, are a platform for experts worldwide to help conserve the cryosphere and other key ecosystems. We also recently established a task force on Antarctica and the Southern Ocean, which gives new inputs to protecting these icy worlds. Furthermore, IUCN develops numerous standards and tools, such as the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species and the IUCN Red List of Ecosystems, which help inform the global community in implementing policy. Finally, the 2025 IUCN World Conservation Congress will present a key opportunity to drive momentum on implementing the commitments that will be made in this summit. Friends of glaciers and poles, let me end by highlighting the urgent need for global action. The cryosphere is changing, with the glaciers and poles melting before our eyes. You have seen today's presentations and yesterday's presentations. What happened there is of global concern. Only by working together can we ensure that people worldwide will still have fresh water to drink. Only by working together can we ensure that the ocean processes that govern life on Earth are maintained. Only by working together can we achieve a future where people and all life on the planet thrive. Thank you very much. Gracias. Merci.
C'est lui qui va dire les derniers mots, enfin les avant-derniers mots.
Last words. Antoine Petit, you have the floor. You have the floor. All right, so I could speak as the director, the manager of CNRS, but we are in charge of so many articles in favor of North Pole and South Pole. So I will just focus upon the, let's say, the main issues regarding the scientific community. The first thing we need is, of course, good infrastructures. For example, we've been able to talk about the Concordia scientific bases with Italy, etc. We have different bases, etc. But basically, we need specific observation platforms in order to make it possible to make assessments, for example, at different scales to produce data. This is very much important. We also need an interdisciplinary approach. This is important regarding environment, climate, and mathematics, climatology, data, chemistry, social science, etc. We need, of course, international cooperation. This is so much important. As Mona would say, we work on a joint basis, but in France and Canada, we have a specific common laboratory, which is important. And then we need, of course, to work on a joint basis with local populations and indigenous populations. But we need money, as someone would say. We need money in this respect. So, of course, today we need money. Hope that tomorrow we'll get the money. And that would be great for all of us. And Frederick Paulsen's initiative is absolutely favorable, in addition to the Tara Foundation, which has been sponsored us for years, and regarding the polar station. And I think that this is so much important. But in a nutshell, I would say that we have had lots of statements, dear statements, but in France, we need that a dear statement is good, but evidence is much better. Evidence. So we need, of course, the money, in other words. Thank you for your attention.
D'abord, il faut remercier les
We would like to thank the interpreters. Thank you. The Museum of Histoire Naturelle in Paris. 2 days, of course, that was a new event. I suppose that lots of things have to be improved. Maybe other countries will organize such a meeting, but I would like to really thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming here from all over the world. You came over here with your own convictions, your own enthusiasm. It is not easy for us to convince politicians and governments, and I hope that tomorrow we'll be happy about that, because let me tell you that we've been able to negotiate this specific statement, but there is a lot to do prior to signing this statement. Why? Well, of course, we are talking about climate, we are talking about science, we're not talking about policy, but we don't talk about geopolitics, etc. But I believe that regarding our discussions, my feeling is that geopolitics is not so much open-minded. I'm not going, well, I would say that regarding Antarctica, Antarctic, etc., my feeling is that they are a little bit narrow-minded. And of course, this is so much important. And what the minister from Mauritius Island said, for example, is of course so much important, gives evidence about the fact that this is a global problem. And of course, even if you do not, you believe to belong to the Arctic Circle or the Antarctic Circle, you have all these problems. Of course, are essential for all of us. Or what the expert said about Kathmandu, for example, several countries have decided to work on the same basis, even if geopolitically speaking they do not agree, they are not in agreement. So I believe that tomorrow, of course, I would say that the Paris statement is supported by lots of countries, but regarding politics, I think that we have to think out of the box, especially in favor of the planet, especially in the event of disruption. In the event of political disruption, I believe that we need, of course, to put an emphasis upon the fact that this is also a climatic disruption. And for example, especially regarding the impact upon the cryosphere, upon these aspects that are so much important regarding the exploitation by mining companies, corporations, etc., who, of course, should care about the Antarctica and the Arctic. Of course, I expect this specific dream will not become a nightmare for them, for us. And I hope that the global community is able to find the right solution. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, this will be a specific meeting with heads of governments, but there will be a limited number of attendees. But anyway, you will have the possibility to listen to the meeting. And of course, organizing such a polar summit is a big job, but this is so important for all of us. And I would like to say that it's been a real pleasure being with you all for 2 days. Thank you.